Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unfuck Your Money show. I'm your host, Nadine Zomot. I'm a somatic healing practitioner and a money coach. And I've got Cecily Sailer with me here today. Cecily is a creativity coach and a lot of things. You know, I feel like you're a lot of things. She is, most importantly, one of the awesomest people that I have the honor of having here on my podcast. And I was just telling her beforehand that I have the longest list of questions. I don't know if we're going to get to them all, but just like talking points. There's so much to talk about, so much to get into. Welcome. I'm so happy you're here. Hi.
Hi. Hi, Nadine. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to explore this long list.
So, what would you tell our listeners about who you are? What's turning you on in life these days, and what do you do?
Turning me on. Let me start with that. Birds always turn me on. I'm a big bird nerd. And where I'm sitting right now, I'm at my mother's house. I happen to be there at this moment, and she has the most elaborate bird feeder set up.
Wow.
So I think the birds are napping right now, but they should be back soon. And they bring me
Cute.
so much joy. And what talking about turn-ons too, I also like this year discovered that I really started to understand that Venus is my goddess, and I've been working more with her. And so that's been really cool. And I'm always turned on by tarot. And what I do is, as you said, I'm a creativity coach. So I help people reframe their relationship with creativity, reignite it, heal it, move through projects, refine their creative businesses. The work I started doing on my own was originally centered in tarot. And so tarot infuses a lot of my work. I teach about tarot, I give tarot readings. There's a whole community I host.
I'm a part of
Is,
it.
yes,
Woo, woo, woo.
love that you're there. Yeah, that really kind of ties these things together: creativity, magic, tarot. And then I'm a writer too. Writing is a big thing for me. So that's some
Just
highlights.
that. So that's why I couldn't sum it up. So I was always scared. I don't know, this is weird, right? Like I was always scared of tarot. I was like, oh, what is that? It's that thing, it's that mysterious thing. And then you and I connected a couple of years ago now. We met through Kat Lee and the Business Alchemist mentorship, but then we reconnected because we were trying to like figure out a platform together. And you're like, thank you. Let me offer you a reading. I was like, okay. And your reading was so good. So good. I'm going to put all your details in the show notes because everybody needs a reading from you at least once a year. And then I was like, okay, I just had this feeling that we need to go somewhere. So we went. I joined your creative magic collective, and I feel like in very subtle ways, my life has shifted and my relationship to creativity has shifted. And joining the collective was, you know, a part of it, right? Like I've always had a weird relationship with creativity because I'm the scientific person, right? So my mother is an architect and she's very, very creative. And she told me when I was a kid that only special people are creative, but you're scientific. And I'm like, so I'm not special, but I'm also scientific. So, okay, we'll go with that. And my dad was all like, you know, the only way you can create security financially is through having a job and being very scientific and logical minded, blah, blah, blah. So I grew up kind of shy of the word creative. Like if someone would say, "Oh my God, you're so creative! You created this meal out of scraps or whatever," I'd be like, "No, no, I'm not. I'm not that. I'm not creative. No, 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 no. I'm no. Like no. That's a word that would not describe me." Is this something you see often with human beings? Or is it just me?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think westernized thinking, which has infiltrated so much
Yeah,
of the world,
definitely.
and colonization along with it, have really segmented our humanity. And this whole like movement of rationalization and science-based thinking and really elevating the scientific and what's provable and what's measurable
Hmm.
above everything else, which has so many ill effects. Even though I respect science, I believe in
Yeah.
science. Science is important. I support science. Um, but it really has kind of created this sort of like split or this, it's like you can have both. There are ways to look at the world using science and
Hmm.
creativity and intuition and what we sense and what we perceive on a number of different levels. But yeah, there's really been this bifurcation. And so I think it really herds people into these camps of like, you got to be this one, which means you're automatically not that
Not the
one.
other one. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Yes. Very interesting. Yeah, I would. It would like make me feel like I'm allergic. Like, oh no, no, I'm not creative. Who am I? And it's like something I desire to be, but I'm not. Like I do want it, but I don't. I'm too shy to want it, kind of thing. You know? But I think that what happened ultimately is that through working on myself. So everybody knows that creating a business, being a soul-driven entrepreneur, it is I don't know who said that. One of my mentors said that. She said it's personal development on crack. Pretty much, it's pretty like what I'm trying to say is through working on my business, I've had to heal a lot of crap, a lot of stuff from my past. And somehow creativity kind of emerged with that sense of resilience that was being built. It was like, "Hi, I didn't know you were coming, but I'm very happy you're here," kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Is that something that also happens? Like, what's the role of creativity? How does it partner up with resilience when we are kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel in a good way?
Yeah, I love these questions, and I'm so glad you're sharing in this way. And I'll start by saying I think about creativity as an energy.
Mhm.
Like, there's a lot of, I don't know, when I was growing up, and kind of back to like your first question and that bifurcation, there's sort of like, they're a creative person and they're not a creative person, or I'm a creative person or I'm not a creative person.
Mhm.
And I think it's not a trait that like we have. I think it's an
I agree.
energy that we get to work with.
Mhm.
So I think of it as the energy that created all of it, the earth, the animals,
Yes.
like the creation,
Mhm.
the microcosm of the creation is also the same energy that we connect with when we're doing creative things. And so I think it makes a lot of sense that as you start to unblock things in your life, as you start to awaken
Mm.
buried parts of yourself, as you open up channels and possibilities in your life, and you become more receptive to letting yourself change or letting yourself be who you are, then it's kind of like you take a muddy field and that healing process sort of like clears out some of the mud, and you find that there's these like streams or channels that got buried, and now that they're open, stuff just starts flowing back through. And I think creativity is one of those energies that would come back flowing without you necessarily going to specifically look for that.
Speaking of open, I think all my pores are open right now. Like I've got goosebumps everywhere. Holy shit. That was awesome. I'm so glad it's recorded. I was like, it's recorded. Fuck yeah. So good.
And I
Um,
did think of myself, or, creativity was something I wanted to be a writer when I was really young.
mhm,
So that was with me. And I think, people generally put writing in this category of creativity. And I continued to write, but I also, as part of my story in my journey is wrestling with alcohol addiction and quitting drinking and recovering from that. And similarly, when I was deeper into addiction, there was just so much shut down. There, like everything was kind of like clogged and turned off and numb. And I could still do creative things, but it was like drips,
Okay.
drabs, like not joyous. It was like I would put it into the work I did, and then that was it, mostly. And so, but in my own recovery process, like spirituality came to me in a new, vibrant kind of way. And kind of at the same time, creativity flooded back into, which is part of why I also love to like kind of bring the two together. I think working with creativity is a spiritual practice. You don't have to think about it like that, but I kind of think that it is. And I hope this is making sense, but I'm just trying to like kind of identify with your story that similarly, when I kind of, even as a creative person who wanted to be a creative person, I I felt that experience of having everything blocked and then opening things up, and the creativity that wasn't the first thing I was searching for, but it
Mm-hmm.
just started coming, you know?
That makes a lot of sense, but actually you just gave me a breakthrough because I never put these two things together, creativity and spirituality, because it also came to me in the same way, that part of that resilience that I was talking about is creating that internal sense of safety within myself. And part of that was being more open to spirituality and feeling like I'm protected, even though my whole life I felt like I was just alone. And that's also that flood of creativity that came in that was just, it feels like it's like that energy, that life force energy, that's
Exactly.
what it felt like that resilience, the spirituality and creativity all like came together when I started accessing more life within me as opposed to just being in fights, because that was my default. I know a lot of people go into dissociation or collapse, but for me it was more about that, like always being aggressive, always being in fight energy. When that calmed down and I felt safe within myself, you're right. Like these three elements and more emerged and became more and more. But I was only scared of creativity because of
Mm,
how my dad put it.
funny.
Because I'm sure I'm not the only one that conflates creativity with productivity and conflates or maybe misunderstands that being creative does not mean that you're gonna be poor, you know?
God, that's so big. That's such a big deal.
It is.
That's a huge part of the narrative too.
Yeah.
And how people get creativity kind of like, I want to say almost shamed out of them,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's like, the message you get when you're very young is like, yeah, that's cute, that's fun as a
Frivolous.
kid, but then you need to get serious and get like a real job, because
Yeah.
if you follow down that creative path, you will be broke, you will be alone, you will be weird.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
um, yeah, so a lot of people, and some of my clients are folks who are moving into retirement and did that thing. They became lawyers, they
Yeah.
became professionals of various kinds, and they remember when they were younger and they had like this creative playfulness and they liked to do creative things, and finally they're done with like the productivity
Yeah.
hamster wheel and they're like, I want this back. And that's what we start working on.
I bet there's a lot of grief in that work, huh?
Yes,
Right?
yes, yes,
I
yes.
bet there's a lot of grief there. I remember as a kid, I would just, my focus in my life was dancing, like not professionally, not like
Mm.
going to dance classes either. We didn't have that in Jordan in the 80s. Like we don't go to dance classes, but dancing in my living room. I was just dancing, dancing, dancing all the time. And I remember at some point I stopped, and because I had to study, right? Like I had to be more
Mm.
serious, and remembering that made me sad. And now the way that I actually connect back with myself, a lot of people do it through meditation. For me, it's more connecting with dancing and playing Michael Jackson because that's what I played when I was a kid. I know it's a stigma now, but like that's what I connected to as a child. And that's where I reconnect or recharge my soul batteries. It's just going back to that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think dancing is a beautiful, it's so embodied, such a embodied form of creativity. I mean, I think so much of creativity is embodied, not always when we're like typing do we feel super embodied,
Yeah.
but many of the other art forms allow us to be in our bodies while this other energy is flowing through us. And I
Yeah.
think that's part, it just feels so good.
So the other like element of this conversation is like when something feels good, right? Like when you write, me, when I write, you write well. I don't write very well. So when
Yes, you
I
do.
write, when I dance, I'm like very like an organic chicken. It's free form, right?
Good.
As soon as I start wanting to get better at it, that's when things stop being fun.
Yeah.
Like I know ever since I was a kid, I've known that I need to write a book. But anytime I think about it, I'm like, now I'm gonna stop enjoying writing. It's gonna become
Mm.
this. I write all day, every day. It's my thing, right? Like I love writing. But make me like put if I put in my head that it's going to be for a blog or a newsletter or a post or now for my next project a book, it feels like okay, nah, you're going to drain the fun out of it. It's like when you dance, when I started going to dancing lessons and they're like right foot first. I'm like, no, my left foot want to goes first. And then I'm like, I'm the wrong person and I'm too whatever wild. And that kind
Mm.
of like stole the fun away from it. So how do we navigate that bullshit?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And another area where, the like capitalism of everything and the colonialism of everything
Hmm.
also imposes these ridiculous standards and really emphasizes perfection, which is unachievable
Yeah.
and not even executed
It's not enjoyable.
by nature. I mean, like nature in a lot of ways, I think is perfect, but it doesn't have straight edges and, it's wild. And so creativity, for one thing, is a beautiful place and space to work with that and start to heal some of that. And it's, of course, a space where we're going to get activated around that. And I, this year or in the past year, like a year ago now,
Hmm.
started playing ukulele and started taking lessons and got back to learning to read music and really suck at it. Like I'm not that good because I don't play ukulele. I hadn't been playing ukulele for 45 years, right? So, um, but it's kind of like with music, you start to see that the practice and the connection to the instrument is how you get better at playing it. But I
Mm.
was also in a weekend workshop just last weekend, so playing with other people and learning some new songs, and the teacher had us, this thing happens inside of me when like the music is going along and my fingers can't find the fret in time, and I have to like sit out a couple measures and then I get lost and I start my body, like there's just this nervous system thing where I'm just like I want to cry.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
starting to get into freeze, and it's this like good student perfectionism thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then the teacher, I'm trying to like hide it from everyone else around me. And the teacher probably detects this, but kind of takes us to, he can play this track in the back and he gives us this scale and he's like, just play any of these 6 notes on whatever beat you want, like at whatever rhythm that kind of matches the song. And so we just started like plucking and like finding notes and kind of like, not playing for a second, but then boom, 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 like you just add
Hmm.
it in.
Hmm.
And so then it started to be fun. And I was like, I can do this, even though I can't play this song right now. I'm playing I'm becoming part of the song by just doing this simple thing, and it's
Ah.
spontaneous. There's no right way, and it was
Mhm.
really refreshing. So just being in that space where I can't be perfect, I have to face that icky feeling of like sucking. And then also letting myself go to a place where I just get to play. And, like, how can we make it
Just
fun?
play.
How can it be joyous? What would Venus do? Like, she wants us to be in pleasure,
Yes.
especially in creativity. She's also the goddess of art. And so I think that was a story example, but I think a shorter answer is sort of letting yourself come into creative energy and process where there is not an objective, and asking
Mm.
yourself, like, how can I make this fun for me? How can this be an exploration? How can I stay curious? And of course, when you have a big book project that you want to finish
Or start.
or start, it's like, yeah, like, what's a fun entry point for me? And how can I kind of like fuck
Mm.
around with the ideas that are informing what I want to say without imposing like a whole big book on it from the very beginning?
You said a lot of like pingy things, like in a good way, like lots of ahas in what you said, lots of healing for me, like validation. I'm seeing myself in lots of different angles now. But what I want to like kind of go into is another thing that like kind of picked up from what you're saying is that it's not about perfection, it's really about participation.
Yes. Yes, yes. Because when I backed out of playing
Yeah.
and everyone else in the room is like hitting some notes, I feel terrible. Like
Yeah.
really alone and like really
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
wrong.
I get that in breakdancing. They're all like doing one thing and I'm like, grandma funk here kind of this is a little bit behind. Hello. Yes, me. I get that.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. And
No.
the teacher is just like, if you can't play that, play like the first note of the measure or
Hmm.
the first note of every other measure. So like how can you be in the song somehow without trying to force yourself to like know every bit
Yeah.
of it? Yeah, I
Or
love
be
what
the
you said.
best, you know, just
Right. Right.
yeah, for me, if it's not you, if you're not the best, who are you? That's like how I grew up with my dad. It's like,
Mm.
I got this grade. Who got a better grade? Oh, dudes, for fuck's sake.
Oh
Can we
gosh.
please? So that carried over with like, if I'm not the best, then I'm crap. And that's another part of my creative kind of creativity healing journey that's been very interesting, like I'm aware of all my patterns now and I'm watching them unfold in breakdancing, in adult breakdancing.
I love
And I'm
that.
like, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. This is coming up now, how can we work with it? Um, I feel like humanity needs okay, so my one of my conclusions in life is that we're all creative, and I don't think we
Agree.
disagree on that. Yeah, we're all creative. However, let's say one of your clients that come to you after a lifetime of doing the right thing and being doctors and lawyers and being all like logical brained. How do we rekindle, reignite, reconnect our relationship with creativity and play when we've been so sterile of it for most of our lives?
Yeah. I think when it's kind of an extreme situation, when you've been, separated from it for a really long time, I do think that support is helpful
Yeah.
because it isn't just like, it's not as simple as you getting to the creativity.
Hmm.
It's not like you just need to do it,
Yeah,
right?
you don't
Like
just take up sewing. Like there is some kind of stuff that you
there's
needs to
some,
happen inside.
right, there's just all this programming
Yeah.
that for decades has been keeping you away from it, and it's not going to disappear because you suddenly want
Yeah.
it to.
Makes
And
sense.
and so I find, like, I think therapy is great and amazing, And there are probably some therapists who do have some insight into creativity or some creative practice. But a lot of the people I work with, it sounds like whatever they were doing with their therapist, which in most cases was like effective and supportive, could not really get into the creative part because the therapist just, it's kind of like I used to see therapists sometimes who didn't really understand addiction. So
Mhm,
they didn't really help me with that.
mhm,
Like one
mhm,
woman was
mhm, mhm.
like, just don't drink when you're hungry or tired. And I was like,
Okay, yeah, I see.
you
Not
don't
your
know
specialty, lady.
anything about
Okay.
this.
Yeah.
And similarly, I think there are also therapists who just like don't, you know, maybe think about creativity and what it can do in the therapeutic room, and that's okay. So I do
Yeah.
think support is helpful to try and kind of look at. And of course, if you did this on your own, I think it's examining the stories you were given about being creative, what you were told, how you internalized that, while also starting to reconnect with the part of you, the version of you, however far back or long ago it was, who did have creative freedom, like the creative memories that you
Mhm.
have. It could look like anything, like even if you were piling rocks in a stream to make a dam, that's creative. Even if there were no art supplies or whatever,
Mhm.
just fine. Like the thing where you made or moved or played with material to create something that wasn't there, connecting with that part of you and finding ways to like let that part of you kind of take the lead. Like,
Yeah.
where does that little person want to go right now? Do they want to take a sewing class? Do they want to go take a dance class? Do they want to just get some art supplies and a sketch pad and like doodle while they watch TV? Like, keep it really simple. Do not decide to write a book. Do not decide that you need to, like, you're going to have to come at it differently than you've been doing a lot of other things. And especially if you're like a high achiever
Yeah. Oh,
person who's
yeah, for
always been
sure.
like
Right. You
trying to,
cannot achieve art or
right,
creativity. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're just going to keep kind of suffering through that process that's supposed to be more fun and revitalizing.
And enjoyable. That brings to mind a lot of things. It's like everything you say, I can see branches, and I'm like, okay, I gotta choose one. I gotta choose. It's so hard. So, what this makes me think about is, like I said, several things, but like starting simple. You can't really achieve. It's not something that you achieve, which can be really um like elusive for people, for us people, for human beings that just want to tick things off their to-do list, like sewing,
Mhm.
tick kind of thing, right? But you're very right. It's like when people go to a financial therapist and they're like, okay, well, we did that and we didn't really hit the spots. So it's not like the therapy is not effective. It's just like you kind of need something more specialized, right?
Mm,
Um, so and then the other, like I'm just explaining the branches that came out of what you said.
yeah.
And the other thing that came to mind was that when we think about being creative, what the objection that I might get from my type of clients or like the people that come and see me is that I don't have the budget for it, right?
Yeah.
So what I want to say here is that you really don't need a budget to be creative, honestly. Like all you need is just your imagination, because scarcity plus safety can create creativity, can be an avenue or a channel to
Mm,
express that creativity, right? Like I remember when I was at home and things were a little bit tight, it was scary. I wasn't creative. But
yeah.
when I moved to Australia and things were tight, and I only had, for example, at the end of the month, certain things in my pantry. Oh, because I felt safe in my nervous system. Oh my goodness. I became the best chef I know. Honestly, I really cook very well. It's one thing I do well is that I take care of Arby really well and I cook very well. There's two things I'm proud of. Everything else is just on the side. But it's because of that limitation, that scarcity, because I felt really good and excited about life, that opened up a whole channel of creativity for me. And then I went into cooking school and blah, blah, blah. So that is like one way of looking at it, is like sometimes not having a lot, but if you're safe, you feel good, can actually open up things, ways that, that weren't there before. In Arabic, we say al-haja bil-ikhtira'a, which means in English, necessity. Oh, the necessity is the mother of invention. There you go. I
Yay.
translate it.
Beautiful.
Fuck
Sounds so
yeah.
beautiful in Arabic.
Yeah. So anyway, no question. I'm just chatting back.
No, I like that. I hadn't really thought of that. And um, yeah, I think that like it's making me think too that like one thing I say about tarot is like it's affordable, it's really portable, and you could do a lot with it. And it's like, I mean, yeah, like a tarot deck is like 30, $40 maybe.
Mhm.
Um, but that's like a dinner or,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
and I think, like what you're saying with creativity is that you don't like if you have a pencil and a piece of paper or a stick and some dirt, like you could fuck around, you can
Mhm.
like play around with very little and still give yourself, you don't need a whole arsenal of um, art supplies or a studio
Or a
or
studio, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of times, like, I have clients that say, "Oh, I really want to start a podcast, but I really need a budget for it. Need this and this and this." I'm like, mm, what about just not none of that? What if you just use your really old headset and just go with that and expand? Maybe you don't like it. Maybe it's not for you. Why would you want to invest all that money? And whether we're talking mics and a whole studio or ballet shoes or whatever it is that you're thinking about, just start with what you have. And like you
Yeah.
said, actually, my word for this year, how we do words of the year, my
Mhm.
word for this year is fuck around and find out. So every time you say fuck around, I'm like, how did you know? That's my word.
I love it.
So as creative entrepreneurs, right? How do we remain, in your opinion? Like, I'm really not asking you as somebody that is like an oracle and knows all the answers, but just something to discuss because it's something that really fucks with me, honestly. Like, how do you remain authentic to your creativity in a capitalist world where, I mean, I'm not gonna go in there, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard.
Well, yes, that was like the first thing I'm going to say is it's hard. And I think you and I have touched on just some of what we're up against in the world. And there's more than that, like creativity is undervalued and extracted, exploited in so much of capitalism.
Mhm.
Um, It seems to me in this moment that first, creativity is a space where we can start to discover what that authentic self is or
Yeah.
what it wants to say and express. And I think that's the first thing is like, I think for most people, it's a journey to really like figure out who we are
Yeah.
fundamentally. I don't think we're like a fixed thing that we, need to like get to the bottom of. And life is so interesting because like even I remain a mystery to myself, the person I spend the most time with in my life. And I'm constantly changing and
Yeah.
like hopefully we're changing.
Yeah.
So it's very fluid, it's very organic. But I think in so many other parts of life, we are facing this expectation to perform in some way, to look professional, be professional, speak professionally, and or whether it's in like a community space or something like that. And creativity is really a place where we just get to be with ourselves. It's like the ungoverned space where we can start to get really curious about who we are and what we want to make.
Mm.
And then I think it's about noticing as well, like what comes up for us when we start to create, these thoughts that are like, well, everyone else on Instagram is making this and my stuff looks like this. So I
Mhm.
guess there's something wrong with it. And I need to figure out how to make my stuff look more like that. So we live in this
Ow.
very,
That's pretty
yeah.
much it for me. Yeah, that's my life. Mhm.
Yeah, it's painful and it
Mhm.
really will stop you from
Yeah.
creating. Like some of my clients are also in this like compare and despair sort of place, or even um, find it hard to be happy for their friends when they have a creative achievement, because they take it into themselves about what someone else is doing means about them,
Yeah.
which is absolutely nothing. It doesn't mean anything about you.
Mhm.
So I think it's also starting to notice when your own like internal creative cop is like trying to get you to make things a certain way because of whatever else is happening in the world, or what people like, or what
Yeah.
people are buying, and really start to look at that like, oh, I hear this inside me. Let me slow down. Let me like think about that. Let me pause with that. And I think that's
Mhm.
another place, like you said, like we started, it's so hard. Those are a couple of things that are coming up for me right now, and I
Yeah.
wonder what you think. Maybe we can keep riffing on it, but
Let me tell you what I think. I've been fucking around with this experiment. It's no secret, like Instagram is my kryptonite. So I used to think I was bad at marketing. Then I started working with someone that was like, Nadine, you're not bad at marketing. It's just Instagram. You are confusing Instagram with marketing. And I'm like, holy shit, I am. Because for me, marketing is just communicating what I do. And I'm very passionate about what I do. So all I need to do is like put on the mic, talk about what I do. And that, I guess, is considered marketing, even though my intention is like, yo, this is what I fucking do. It's fucking awesome. Do you need it? Come, kind of thing. Right. But then with the whole thing with Instagram, it's like, you kind of need to put lipstick on. I love lipstick, but you know what I mean. Like, kind of need to dress it, but you needs to be flashier. Too many words on the fucking slide. It's like, wow, wow, seriously, like, don't like. It's like over pruning my wild side. So it's like, okay, what if I let Instagram go? What will happen? Lo and behold, I became way more fluid and creative on my podcast. It became way more enjoyable for me. My whole life became more enjoyable because I'm not thinking of like, how do I Instagram this shit? Fuck that, right?
yeah,
It's a
good for
great
you.
tool for people. A lot of my friends love it. It works well for them. They're making millions of dollars from it. But it's not just, it's too boxy for me. Like I don't feel good on. Maybe one day it'll change. I don't know. But the experiment was let it go, see what happens. And what happened is happiness happened. Happiness happened.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful. I'm inspired by this. I'm kind of like wrestling with,
Mhm.
I don't post a lot, but I'm on it, and I'm at that I'm coming to that crossroads very seriously. And the other thing about it is like, it's hard enough to please the world or the systems or,
And now we've got to please
mainstream society.
robots.
Exactly. The algorithm is always going to kind of screw you over, I think. And so it's just, yeah, like a space for torturing yourself for a lot of us. And I think when you notice what makes you feel bad,
Yeah.
it like please notice it and try to stop, so that you like what
You're
happened
not
with
wrong. Trust yourself.
exactly. And I think that's what authenticity
Gotcha.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
about as well, is like letting yourself feel what you feel, think what you think, and follow that more and more.
Hmm.
See what happens, see how much better you feel, and then it's a gradual process. But yeah, if there's something looming over you, like if going to the poetry reading every month and watching all these other poets read right now makes you feel bad because you're not writing the poems you want to write. Just
Don't go.
stop going for a while
Yeah, don't
so you
go. Take a
can,
break.
yeah,
Exactly. This is exactly
it's
how I'm
okay.
looking at it. I think my wake up call with Instagram came, it was it's a very simple sentence that just woke me up. So, one of an Instagram friend that has like 250,000 followers or
Wow.
something, they posted something and they were complaining to me saying, I only got 50,000 likes. Only 50,000, and relatively for 250, it sounds like low engagement. I get it, but I was like, it's always going to be like this.
Yeah.
I wasn't laughing at them. I was laughing at the situation of it's always going to keep you hungry. It's hungry.
Yes.
It's going to keep
Yes.
you hungry. There's no like a post, like there's no one sign of success. You're going to keep chasing it if you allow yourself to. And that was it for me. I was like, oh wow, even if and when I reach that, the thing, I'm still going to be disappointed. Okay. All right, I give up. Fuck it. Move on.
Yeah.
Moving on. I've
At
got
this rate, I would have to be like 95 to even get to 250,000 followers.
and then I don't know if I care, right? Like
Exactly.
I don't know if I
Exactly.
really care, honestly. Like, it's very cliche to say, like, is your goal or your dream yours, or is it what's expected
Mm,
of you, right?
exactly. Exactly.
Oh man, that's really funny. So speaking of content creation, I actually I'm making it a habit to consult tarot when I need
Mm,
inspiration.
yes.
And I know that a lot of people consult ChatGPT, nothing wrong with that. But
Mm,
look, it's a friend sometimes, right? It's just like a little, it's controversial. However, let's just stick to tarot. I love consulting my tarot deck and your book. Actually, we really need to talk about your book, like for reals. It's so good. But for now, let's talk about drawing inspiration from tarot and just like for someone like me who a year ago did not have a relationship with tarot, I was really scared of it. I was like, oh, this thing, right? Um, I still feel like it's a mysterious thing sometimes, but with your help and the help of the community and your book, I was like, this is actually a different kind of like beautiful layer to my life.
mm.
How can someone get started on their tarot journey? I feel like I'm answering my own question, but you know what I mean. You're the expert. I mean, I only have my story. What's yours? What's your outlook or perspective?
But yeah, so maybe I'll start by saying, and I think that fear of tarot is common for a lot of people, especially if you grew up in like a religious institution. There's a
Yeah,
lot of like, you'll conjure the devil or
yeah.
that kind of thing. And maybe you could conjure the devil with tarot,
You
but
could probably
unless
do
you're
it with a lot of
trying,
things.
yeah, unless you're trying, you're safe. But I see tarot, in one sense, it's like a stack of paper. It's a stack of 78 pieces of paper. But then beyond that, I see it as like an ancient technology
Mm,
that we can use to communicate with our higher self, our intuition, our spiritual team, our ancestors, the universe, like however you want to think about it. It could be all of these things. Sometimes I feel it is all of those things for me.
mhm.
But it came into my healing journey like a year after I quit drinking. It kind of like grabbed me by the hair and was like, we're doing this.
Wow, I love it when that happens. You're like, okay, I can't ignore you. Okay, let's go.
Yes, yes. And so speaking like all, all the things we've been talking about, this kind of the ways that we can be separated from ourselves, this journey to like, who am I authentically? What do I authentically want to say or share or be? We live so much in our brains. All of that Western civilization rationalization stuff really like makes us live from the neck up.
Mhm.
And we have a lot of wisdom that exists in other parts of the body. Our intuition is a embodied knowing. It's not
Yeah.
a brain knowing. It's like a gut knowing, or it's somewhere else for us. And so I see tarot as a way to like interface with those other parts of ourselves that we can't access just by like thinking about it, or not even necessarily in meditation, depending on what that feels like.
Mhm.
So we're also, in this like rationalized world, most of the way that we think is based in language. So we talk to ourselves in the languages that we speak. And tarot speaks to us in symbol and imagery. So when we turn over a card, we can feel something, understand something without having to think about it. And so it kind of circumvents this other, all the ways like we're kind of wired to operate. It kind of like
Mhm.
short circuits the operating system
Mhm.
and activates these other aspects of ourselves that we can use in like this more integrated, holistic way of living. So, having a background as a writer, like I worked in journalism, I worked in creative arts nonprofits, I did a creative writing MFA, which was very based in like refining the craft and like how do other writers do it and like workshopping our work. And none of it attended to like what is creativity, how do we like to, it didn't go into the kind of
Yeah.
underlying bits. But at the same time, like after that program, for myself, and I started to learn that for other people who went through similar programs, there was sort of this like, now what do I do with this? And I think everything we learned in the program, while it's really helpful and valuable, and I'm glad I did it, after like beyond that, and after reflecting on that experience and then finding tarot, I was like, oh, this can really be a friend to a creative person because it can offer up new ideas that your brain isn't going to create. You
Mhm.
don't have to go farm the whole internet for other people's ideas. You can just look at these beautiful cards and something new will spark for you. And usually it's
Yes.
not like way out in left field, it's like in the field. You're like, oh, yeah, I was kind of like thinking something like that, but I didn't know it was kind of foggy. And the card will like crystallize that for you.
Ah, that's my
So,
experience. I love that you said that. It's kind of like when when you connect with your guidance and the answer is always like simple and not over the top. It's kind of like that with tarot. It's like, ah, okay, thanks. Okay, that's cool. I like it. I
yeah.
like it. And I love how in your teachings you always, always, always insist in a very good way that we don't run and try to find the answer. Like we sit with the cards at least for 5 minutes, kind of like open up to it and see what's similar, see what stories they could tell. I really, really like that approach. It really helped me because I'm always like, what does that mean? What does it mean? Am I gonna die? Like, no, chill, girl. Chill. It's like, no. Um, I know that this is the year of the hermit because that's what you told me. And I know that there is a recording for me to watch, but just for our listeners here today, what what does that mean in terms of like creativity, abundance, finances? How does the hermit card kind of like lend to that?
Yeah. So it's the hermit year because when you add the numbers of the year, 2 and 0 and 2 and 5, you get 9, which is the number of the hermit. And the hermit is walking a path on their own. They are outside of society and doing something different from what everyone else is doing. Their journey is not so much about the destination, but about the experience of the journey
Mm,
and where they're going, what they're doing, the way that they're getting to know themselves is what fuels this wisdom that they carry. So you'll see in most cards the hermit will carry a lantern, and that lantern is said to be illuminated by the wisdom of the hermit themselves.
mm,
So in 2025, when technology is doing all kinds of like accelerated things, when capitalism is like, you know, off the charts, smoking its own crack. I don't know like how to describe
yeah.
it. And there's so much misinformation, disinformation out in the world, and there's so many things we can be distracted by. So,
Misdirection as well. Yeah, misdirection with information. I think that's what you meant with misinformation, but I don't know. I just wanted to say that. Yeah.
yeah. And so we can get lost in this sea of like what's true,
Mm-hmm.
or even just scrolling for, like, oh, an hour went by when I meant to actually open my phone for some other reason.
I just wanted to know what time it was.
Right? What's on my calendar? Oh, wait. So, and I think in terms, like, one way I'm thinking about it is, and I think this is a really important year for me personally to think about, okay, is this the year I want to get off social media, or at least like feel the feeling of not being on it? Something I think about and have thought about for a long time is like, how do I consume things? Who do I buy from?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like the many trends and systems we live in also train us to be consumers. And like, so that's one reason I think like when someone wants to start a podcast, they're like, well, I need to go buy all this stuff because it's like everyone else has this equipment. There's just everything is reinforcing like go spend money
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
before you do something or while you do something or after you do something. Spend money all the time. And I don't think the hermit's sort of like asking us to not spend money all year or not invest in the things that we want and the things that we enjoy. But I think it can be a good year to reflect on if money is an energy that supports or enhances whatever I give it to,
Yeah.
where do I really want to give it? And like, what am I giving it to? Like, I personally really try, like, I think about labor practices of big companies. Like, I switched my phone carrier a while back, I switched banks many years ago. Um, and I really try to almost never buy off of Amazon. And like, that's for me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like here to preach about that, but and certainly like a lot of that has to do also with like environmentalism. So, for you, what are your values? And like, how can you conserve energy for yourself? How can you spend more time in your own energy, discovering who you are and who
Yeah.
you're becoming? And how can you be more conscientious about putting your energy into things that align with who you are now, who you're becoming?
Spot on. Like this is exactly the energy or the intention, the approach that I feel globally we're really desperate and needing at the moment. I'm half Virgo, so this card is
Yes,
also
it
like a
is a Virgo
double
card.
whammy for me.
Yeah.
And that is actually my intention for this year. It's not about I'm gonna have 100K year, any of that crap. Like I know that this is the trend and no shade on people that really want to do that, but I can't do that. If I do that, if I were to set a financial number for myself, it would feel really pressurizing.
Yeah.
It would not feel yummy, but you know, kind of focusing on my intentions of what I create, why I create, where I spend my time, and maybe focusing on a percentage more. Like instead of, oh, I want to smash this goal this year, it's more like, can I make 5% Can I help 5% more people this year? Or can I make
Mhm.
5% more money this year? There's no shade. I mean, I love money. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's not about like the big things. It's not about the what, it's about the how we're doing things, because that nuance is now it's maybe the last chance of saving what's left of all this. I don't want to be all existential, but it's kind of scary. It's kind of scary.
We're at a very critical time, and like my main objection to AI honestly is like the energy demand
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it
yeah, for sure.
requires, and not like you're not being creative if like
I know
it's
it
not
does
not
take, and
that.
you don't have, like, you go on Google now and it's AI
It's the
again.
first thing,
The
you're going to be
first thing, I'm
using
like, I
it
don't want
anyway.
that. I don't want
Exactly.
that.
I didn't ask for this.
Um,
Or maybe I
how,
did. I don't know.
how do we stay positive in this dumpster fire of whatever life?
Yeah, that's a
How do you
great.
stay positive? I'll tell you how I stay positive, but you tell me first. You go first.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's not trying not to. There's this balance between I'm not going to put my head in the sand and just
Yeah,
be like la la la, I don't know what's going on, but I don't need to be exposed to every shocking little thing that politically is about to happen whenever it happens. I don't want to be on that timeline.
yeah,
I want to have like more dedicated space for like, who do I want to hear from telling me this? Like,
yeah,
who are my trusted sources? Whose writing do I like? Whose reporting do I trust? And so, I think the hermit is good for that. Like, how do we be more intentional about what's coming into our field? Being in nature is really important to me.
mm,
And, I talked about the birds first thing. And like, when I look at them just going about their business, trying to get food, flying around, looking pretty, I'm like, okay, humans aren't the only, like, they're dominating things for sure, but not thinking about human things and being with the non-human world is really important to me and really refreshing to me. And yeah, being in conversation with myself, either through like journaling, creativity, really like letting myself spend time processing all of the insanity and wonder of like being alive right now.
yeah, yeah.
How do you do it?
Kind of not very different to you, actually. I really prioritize spending time in sunshine, in nature. I like to connect with birdsong. It kind of makes things feel a little bit serious, little bit less serious when
Mhm.
when you hear birds singing. You're like, oh, okay, that's nice. There is something. I don't know. It just fills me. It's a glimmer for
It's
me.
it's primal. Like when we hear bird song, we know that there aren't like
Threats.
big predators around.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
when we hear it, our nervous system naturally settles a bit.
Okay, well, that makes sense. So, spending time in nature, I love to spend time with my dog because she's hilarious and cute, but also
Same.
it just calms me, like
Yes.
it's very calming. Um, and community, whether
Yes.
online or in person. I'm kind of new here to Albuquerque. My only community is my breakdancing friends, which is really lovely. They're really awesome people. I really stumbled upon really cool gang a really cool group, I mean. But a lot of my online communities, like your community, has been very helpful, just being with people. Even, I mean, I know that ideally we want to be with people in person, but also there is that convenience of just going on the app and seeing what you all are up to and all that stuff. And I really feel like a lot of like that feeling of belonging and safety and being in community with people that share your values is very, very important for our
Mhm.
well-being.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about your the group that I'm in. What can you tell our listeners about it? Because I feel like they should all be in it, really. Like, just, that's my opinion. Yo,
Yeah.
seriously. Listen up.
I would love to welcome new people into the community. But yeah, working my business for 7.5 years. And I feel like this community is the culmination of all the things that have
Mm,
been coming up and guiding me to this point. And one of my favorite cards is the Six of Cups. And in that card, you'll see usually often two children who are exchanging a flower pot, and they're standing in the midst of what looks like a really warm, beautiful village. And there's this implication of reciprocity and exchange. You can't really tell like who's giving the flower and who's receiving it. And the other five cups also have these beautiful flowers growing in them. And some of the traditional read of that card is this like nostalgia kind of quality, but I really read it like the the community that I wish the world had created for
mhm.
us and that we had created together, where there is less isolation, there is more growing together, exchanging together. We're on this, like, so much of life is like figure it out by yourself, be successful, have money, spend it, and fill your house with all this stuff, every possible thing you could want or need. And it's like, and then you live on a block with 20 houses that are filled with all these things. And I'm not, I don't live on a commune yet, and I haven't like figured out how that works, but this community feels like a place. What I see in the Six of Cups is this place where we get to learn together,
Mhm.
truly be ourselves with each other, witness one another. I don't know if I said this just now, grow together, explore together, create together. And so a lot of my work has been in the intersections of tarot, creativity, and magic and
Mhm.
spirituality. And so this community is where we get to engage in all of those things together. We get to study them together without having to like go through a program and
Yeah.
like move through a set curriculum. There's just like a lot of access points and a lot of resources.
Yeah.
So every individual can like dive into what excites them, and you can't fall behind. And if you're busy one month, like, but the next month things are a little more open, we're here for you. Like, you can always step back in. People are sharing their creations, they're sharing their tarot pulls. You get to ask like, oh, I pulled this card,
That's
like,
me.
I
Oh
don't
my
know.
God. Am I gonna die? No, I'm kidding.
It's a lot of people. And you're like, I mean, there's two versions. It's like you pull a card, and um you're like, oh my God, this card is just like hitting so hard. Like, it's so true. Like, this card is seeing me and loving me. And you look around your house or and you're like, who do I tell? There's no one here who's gonna get it. And so the community is that place. And then simultaneously, if you pull cards and you're like, half of the spread makes total sense, and like this part, I have no idea what's going on, what's the deal? Then there's a community also that you can go to right away and be
Yeah.
like, help. Um, so yeah, it feels really good. It is another source of joy for me. Everyone inside is creative, interesting, like grappling with these questions of trying to stay sane
Mhm.
and happy,
And do
or like
good.
content. Yeah, do good in the world, resist some of these imperatives that are imposed on us. So we're figuring out those things together and learning from each other.
Yeah, I love it. And we didn't even mention its name. It's the Creative Magic Collective. I'm definitely gonna pop the link in the show notes for
Thank
that.
you.
I feel really good about being in that program, in the collective. And yeah, I sometimes disappear, but I never feel like I'm falling behind. That's the last thing we want to feel these days, right?
Mhm.
Like, I think in 2021, we all bought all these courses and programs, and then all of a sudden we're like, what do we do with all this shit? The
Yes.
last thing we want to do is feel like, oh shit, I need 7 hours a week to kind of catch up on whatever.
Yeah.
You never feel that in your collective, which I love. And I
Good.
jumped away just because I wanted to bring this book into our attention. This is the book that you wrote. tarot for creative spirits. And I sometimes travel and I don't have a lot of space, but I would put away things just to bring this book with me. It's like it's my go-to, and it's a great book that Cecily wrote, and it really tell us about the book. Why am I saying anything? You tell us.
No, thank you for sharing about it. Yeah, it's when I started learning tarot, it was a lot of like study, some of that A student stuff, like read books. I started a little notebook with a bunch of different pages for every card, and I was taking all these notes and listening to podcasts. And then I started practicing and just getting like naturally more familiar with the cards. And so I always encourage people not to learn the way that I did, but to learn from this like looking, feeling,
Yeah.
start with yourself, don't go to the book until later kind of approach. And then at the same time, through the work I do with my clients, there's these, I try to ask really juicy questions to help them see things about themselves or what's possible. And so the book is kind of a marriage of those two things, helping you. It's a workbook. And for every card in the tarot, there are journaling and sometimes creative prompts. And so some of the journaling questions are, meant to help you just think about like how you do things, what you want, who you are, memories. Some of them are just like weird, kind of eccentric questions.
Seven of
There's
Cups. Look at that. I love it. I love it. It's just so cool. Like there's artwork. Sorry, I
Yeah, it's
interrupted you.
illustrated. I worked with a wonderful artist friend who made the illustration. So you can also color in it. And, if you don't feel like journaling, but speaking of the hermit, it really is meant to like help you if you're wondering, like, what is my authentic self? Or like, how would I
How would I even
find that
start?
out?
Yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
book has just a bunch of questions and you can really go at your own pace. A lot of people will pull a card and go to that prompt and work with that. I also want it to be non-linear, kind of like the community,
Mhm.
where it's like you take your own path through the book. You don't have to go front to back. So yeah, it's just a way to like impart my experience with the cards without just like teaching you what I think about them, even though there is
Yeah.
some of that in there, but
Yeah,
it's
there's definitely some
smaller.
educational element, but it's very enjoyable. I don't feel like oh gosh, I need to learn this thing, right? Like I sometimes wish there's something similar with human design. I'm very interested in human design, but I'm not interested in
Same. That would be
learning
great.
in that way. But I'd
Yeah.
love something more explorative, like what you have going on with all this. You also have a really fantastic Substack newsletter, which I look forward to. I don't look forward to newsletters, but I do look forward to yours. So I'm gonna pop that
Thank you.
also in the show notes. Yeah, wow, what a great little conversation.
I loved it. Yeah. So rich. I love everything that you've shared and asked. It's been really fun.
Yay. Anything that you would like to add? I know that people will find you in the show notes, so don't worry about that. I got you. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just, I'd love to connect with any listeners who are feeling connected to this conversation and just really want to encourage everyone to be a little more creative this year. Give yourself more time for that. I think there's also this belief that like creativity is something you do when you've finished all the important, productive stuff.
Mm,
And it's so essential to our well-being. It can give us so much. It's not about make what you make or how it looks, but it's that aliveness of the creativity that helps us balance against all of these other things that we face. So I
yeah.
just really encourage everyone to maybe 5% more creativity this year at least.
I actually feel like my muggle productive things flow better if I start my day with
Yeah.
creativity, even though it sounds counterintuitive. But yesterday, my day was jam-packed with lots of things, and I'm like, no, no, we're doing a spread. Like my brain was like, what? I'm like, yeah, we are. And my day just flowed better. And yeah, creativity is medicine.
Yes.
And what you
Yes.
do is medicine. So thank you for what you do. And it's lovely to have you, and it's lovely to be in your world and learn from you. And I hope I see everyone in there. I'm kidding. Oh, well, Cecily, thank you so much for being on the Unfuck Your Money show. Thank you everyone for listening, and I'll see you next time.